Kelsey Mitchell's cryptic social media post has sparked serious speculation about her future with the Indiana Fever, and the timing couldn't be worse. As the franchise prepares for a foundational offseason, Mitchell's possible departure threatens to upend the very core they're trying to build around. With only a handful of players under contract, her scoring presence isn't just valuable, it's essential. And while the front office insists she's a top priority, her silence suggests the negotiations may not be going as planned. In a moment where alignment is everything, this uncertainty could derail months of strategic preparation.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
The stakes are uniquely high for Indiana, as the organization tries to balance immediate contention with sustainable growth. Every roster spot, international scouting trip, and infrastructure investment is being filtered through one lens: how to build a championship team around Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. If Mitchell walks, the offensive blueprint shifts dramatically, forcing a recalibration of roles, chemistry, and pace. The Fever's ambition is real, but execution will require complete buy-in from every cornerstone. Without Mitchell, that foundation gets shakier, and the pressure on Clark and Boston intensifies. The Indiana Fever are on the brink of a complete identity shift, and the front office isn't pretending otherwise. With only 3 players currently under contract, a massive overhaul is not just expected, it's already begun. And with 2 key pieces now out of the picture, Sophie Cunningham and Kelsey Mitchell, this offseason just went from important to absolutely make or break. Kelsey Mitchell's departure hits harder than most. For years, she's been one of the league's most consistent scoring guards, a foundational piece of Indiana's offense, and one of the few veterans who carried the team through some of its lowest points. She's been reliable, loyal, and productive, even as the franchise floundered. And now, she's gone, just as the Fever were supposed to be turning the corner. Her cryptic social media activity hinted at what was coming, but now that it's real, the implications are massive. Mitchell was supposed to be a top re-signing priority. The scoring guard meant to balance Caitlin Clark's playmaking and help keep pressure off Aaliyah Boston in the half-court. Instead, the Fever are now staring down a vacant backcourt spot next to the league's most-watched rookie, and a big question mark in terms of chemistry and leadership. Then there's Sophie Cunningham. Her exit didn't make the same kind of noise, but it still matters. She brought experience, size, and toughness to perimeter, a glue player who wasn't the headliner but played a role in stretching the floor and bringing physicality on defense. She was a solid role player on a team that needed exactly that. Her departure adds another gap to a roster that's already light on veteran grit. So now the rebuild accelerates. Amber Cox, the Fever's GM, isn't downplaying anything. She's acknowledged that the franchise is entering one of the most pivotal off-seasons in its history. The team's direction is crystal clear. Everything revolves around Clark and Boston. The plan is to turn potential into production and move from development into contention. But losing Mitchell wasn't part of that plan. Not like this. She was supposed to be a stabilizer, someone who could let Clark play off-ball, carry scoring loads on rough nights, and provide continuity from a roster that's turned over more times than most in recent memory. Her exit doesn't just leave a statistical hole. It fractures the team's transition strategy. And now, the front office has to rethink everything. They're not sitting still. The scouting push has gone global. Overseas talent, Olympic-caliber international guards, and perimeter defenders with size are all on the table. The Fever want experience. They want maturity, and they want shooting. They know they can't ask Clark to do it all, and they can't overburden Boston either. This roster needs depth and versatility, fast. The team's approach is ambitious. They're not just trying to fill holes. They're trying to build a real foundation around their young stars. That means finding players who fit the system, but also elevate it. Players who understand their role and can thrive in it without becoming another personality war in the locker room. The goal is clear: build a contender, not just a team that improves. They're aiming higher now. This isn't the same Indiana Fever that's been lingering in the bottom half of the league. Ownership is investing real money into infrastructure, upgraded travel, better training programs, focused player development, and a marketing push that centers on Clark's influence. There's a bigger vision, and they're betting everything on it. Clark's presence changes the stakes. Her international pull, her ability to generate attention, and the pressure that comes with her celebrity mean this franchise doesn't have the luxury of waiting. They can't afford another year of figuring it out. They need to compete now, or risk wasting the rare momentum they finally built. That's why losing Mitchell stings, because she was part of that bridge. And now, the team has to rebuild that structure on the fly. They're customizing off-season programs around Clark's health and skill development, which shows just how central she is to the plan. They're not just throwing players together and hoping it works. They're tailoring everything to maximize her growth while protecting her from burnout. From shooting efficiency to injury prevention, every move is being filtered through Clark's lens. But what makes this all more complicated is the unknown. The looming CBA renegotiations could completely shift the landscape. Salary cap changes, roster restrictions, free agency rules, all of it could be rewritten. And that uncertainty is hovering over every front office decision being made right now. They want to lock down long-term pieces. They want veterans who will stabilize the team. But they also have to remain flexible, just in case the league structure looks completely different in 6 months. That's the tightrope Cox and her staff are walking. Stay aggressive without overcommitting. Build a foundation while leaving room to adjust. And now, with Cunningham and Mitchell both out, they have to move fast without panicking. One area where the Fever are pushing hard is international expansion. Clark's brand isn't just national, it's global. The franchise is reportedly looking at China and other overseas markets for exhibition games and branding partnerships. They're trying to position themselves not just as a strong WNBA team, but as an international basketball brand. That could be a smart move, especially if they land a few international players who already have global followings. Combine that with Clark's built-in audience, and the Fever could end up being one of the most visible franchises in all of women's basketball. But visibility doesn't mean much if you can't win. The Fever are now in a dangerous spot. High expectations, high pressure, and no margin for error. Losing Mitchell makes their margin even smaller. Now they have to get every free agency signing right. Every draft pick has to hit. Every training camp invite has to be someone who can genuinely contribute. There's no room left for projects. Even head coach Stephanie White knows the pressure is real. Her public comments have been measured, but you can sense the urgency underneath. Coaching this team is now about more than X's and O's. It's about managing one of the most watched athletes in the sport while building a new system on a shortened timeline. And there's still a long list of unanswered questions. Who steps into Mitchell's role as the go-to perimeter scorer? Can the Fever find a shooter who won't demand touches, but can stretch the defense when Clark draws doubles? Who's going to take the toughest defensive assignments? And more importantly, will they be able to get the locker room right? Because that's what makes or breaks super teams. Not talent, but chemistry. And this team is under construction. Still, again, Mitchell's departure is a warning shot. The Fever's plan might be ambitious, but it's also fragile. If they can't surround Clark and Boston with the right mix of role players, experience, and locker room leadership, they risk wasting their best window. All the infrastructure upgrades, marketing pushes, and international tours won't mean much if the team isn't winning. So this offseason is critical. The front office has to get bold without being reckless, strategic without being hesitant. They need to find players who fit and fast, because if they miss, this could go down as one of the biggest what-ifs in WNBA history. If you've been following the Fever's transformation and want the raw breakdowns behind the headlines, hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more no-spin analysis. Will the Fever finally build a real contender? Or are these roster shakeups the start of another cycle of chaos? One thing's clear, the clock is ticking, and the pressure's never been higher. The Indiana Fever have no more excuses. With Kelsey, Mitchell gone, and Sophie Cunningham off the roster, the transition period is over. The patience is gone. This is no longer a team in development. It's a franchise that has been handed one of the most valuable rookie assets in sports history, Caitlin Clark, and the time to get it right is now. Not next season. Not in 2 years. Now, this offseason isn't just important. It's a tipping point. Because the Fever aren't building around a promising top pick. They're building around a global phenomenon. Clark isn't just expected to contribute. She's expected to carry. And that kind of pressure, that kind of investment, demands a front office that actually knows how to support it. So far, the losses of Mitchell and Cunningham prove just how thin the margin for error really is. Start with Kelsey Mitchell. For years, she was the only consistent scoring option on a team that couldn't stop losing. She was there when the stands were empty. She was there when no one was watching. And now, when the Fever are finally turning heads, she's not. The cryptic posts, the quiet unfollowing of team accounts, the lack of any celebratory send-off, it all adds up to something that doesn't sit right. Mitchell should have been one of the first players re-signed. She should have been rewarded for her loyalty and trusted to help usher in the new era with Clark in Boston. Instead, she's walking, and nobody's explaining why. That silence says a lot. And whatever happened behind the scenes, it doesn't look like the Fever kept their house in order. Now they're stuck replacing their most established backcourt scorer while trying to build chemistry with a young core that's still adjusting to the pressure of national attention. That's not just bad timing. It's bad management. And then there's Sophie Cunningham, a floor spacing forward with physicality and experience. She wasn't a game changer, but she was valuable. You don't win playoff games with 5 stars. You win them with role players who know exactly who they are. Cunningham was one of those players. But now she's gone, too. And it's another piece the team has to replace while pretending the foundation hasn't shifted. Let's be honest. The foundation has shifted. This team is no longer about development. This team is about results. Clark's arrival changed the rules. She brings in the sponsors. She fills the seats. She leads a news cycle. And in return, she's expected to lead a franchise that hasn't been relevant in a decade. No rookie should carry that alone. But if the Fever don't make the right moves right now, that's exactly what she'll be doing. Amber Cox and her front office staff are trying to stay ahead of collapse. The scouting department is going global. They're looking for Olympic experienced guards, international shooters, and veteran defenders who can absorb the defensive pressure that's been dumped on Clark every game. That's the right move, but it has to work. This isn't the off-season to experiment. This is the off-season to execute. The CBA uncertainty makes everything harder. The salary cap could change. Free agency rules could shift. The timing of international commitments could interfere with roster construction, and the Fever know it. That's why the front office is walking a tightrope. Trying to be bold while staying flexible. Trying to invest in talent while keeping options open in case the league's financial structure implodes mid-season. But they don't have time to play it safe. This window with Clark and Boston is real, but it's also fragile. They're still on rookie contracts. They're still developing. This is the moment to build around them. Because the moment they hit their prime, the cap space dries up. The longer they wait, the harder it gets. And Clark's not waiting. Her presence has already elevated expectations. Her performance, even under massive pressure, has kept Indiana in games they would have been blown out of last year. She's not just box office, she's resilient. But the franchise continues to surround her with inconsistent shooting, weak perimeter defense, and rotating role players with no long-term plan. That resiliency won't be enough. She needs stability. She needs shooters. She needs defenders who can guard the other team's best wing without getting blown by. And most importantly, she needs a team that wants to win, not just want to be better than last year. Ownership knows this, which is why they're spending. Upgraded travel, enhanced training facilities, tailored development plans. It's all being built around Clark in Boston. They're not hiding it. Clark is a franchise's centerpiece, on the court and in the marketing room. And that brings its own risks, because with that kind of focus, every mistake gets magnified. Lose a close game? It's on Clark. Miss a free agency signing? It's a wasted year of her rookie deal. Let another player walk in free agency? That's another hole Clark has to cover. The more the team centers her, the more fragile their narrative becomes if they don't win. That's why the front office needs to move with urgency and with precision. This isn't just about finding good players. It's about finding the right players. Shooters who can space the floor and defenders who can take pressure off Boston. Leaders who don't need the ball, to contribute. Veterans who know their role and aren't rattled by playing next to the most talked-about athlete in the sport. Because the media pressure isn't going away. If anything, it's only getting bigger. The overseas marketing deals, the China exhibitions, the global strategy to make Indiana a household name. That's all resting on Clark's shoulders. She can handle it. But she shouldn't have to do it without a real team behind her. And let's not forget, this team is operating under a microscope now. Every roster move will be dissected. Every trade will be second-guessed. Every loss will feel like a failure, not just a bump in the process. That's the reality of having a star like Clark. And the Fever need to act like they understand that. No more vague timelines. No more we're building messaging. You have the two cornerstones. You have the budget. You have the fan base. Now build the team. If they don't, it won't just cost them games. It'll cost them trust. Fans who showed up to support Clark won't stick around for another rebuild. They're not loyal to the logo. They're loyal to the player. And if Clark's not given the tools to win, those fans will check out. So will the sponsors. So will the broadcasters. Because star power only carries a team so far. At some point, that star has to be surrounded with real talent. And with Mitchell and Cunningham both gone, the Fever are running out of time to prove they know what that looks like. This isn't about potential anymore. It's not about patience, development, or some long-term 5-year plan. Those days are over. The moment Caitlin Clark put on that Fever jersey, the timeline accelerated. This franchise doesn't get to be up and coming when it has the most talked-about player in women's basketball right now. And with Kelsey, Mitchell, and Sophie Cunningham gone, the team's decisions are under the sharpest spotlight they've ever faced. Let's be honest, Mitchell leaving wasn't just a free agency move. It was a statement. She was the one constant during the years the Fever were bottom dwellers. She stayed through the losing streaks, the coaching turnover, and the constant resets. And now, when the franchise is finally getting attention, finally getting investment, finally getting some level of national relevance, she walks. It's not hard to read between the lines. Whether it was about contract negotiations, locker room dynamics, or simply being pushed aside in the new Clark-centered ecosystem, Mitchell's departure sends a message. Not everyone believes this rebuild is as solid as the PR suggests. And for fans who thought the Fever were building something stable, that should be a wake-up call. Sophie Cunningham's exit didn't make headlines, but it matters. She was a utility player, physical, experienced, willing to take on tough defensive assignments. The kind of player you need on a contending roster, not necessarily for highlight reels, but for grinding out possessions. Now she's gone, and it's another hole to patch in a roster that already lacks depth. So what's left? 3 players under contract. A rookie phenom under immense pressure. A front office promising an aggressive international scouting push. A coach who knows she's under scrutiny. And a fan base that's gone from cautiously hopeful to rightfully impatient. The front office says it's serious about making a championship run. But serious talk doesn't mean anything without serious execution. It's easy to say you're targeting international stars, veteran shooters, and elite defenders. It's a lot harder to actually land them, especially when the team's most reliable scorer just left without much resistance. This roster can't afford another year of figuring it out. Clark and Boston are 2 of the most promising young talents in the league. But if the Fever don't get them help now, they risk stunning their growth and losing the fate of the fans who finally started paying attention. And let's talk about the CBA for a second, because the timing here is brutal. The entire financial landscape of the WNBA could shift in the next few months. That means the salary cap could change, player movement rules could tighten, and everything the Fever are planning could get scrambled. So while other teams might be waiting to see how things shake out, Indiana doesn't have that luxury. Not when the league's biggest name is wearing their jersey. They need to strike now. That means getting veterans who can start and contribute now. That means getting shooters who can hit consistently and defenders who don't get cooked on every switch. It means building a team that doesn't just survive Clark's minutes. It thrives in them. Because this isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about brand value. It's about keeping up with the expectations that Clark's presence has created. It's about proving to the rest of the league and the world that the Fever aren't just riding the wave of a viral rookie but building something real. Right now, the actions aren't matching the rhetoric. Letting Mitchell go without a clear replacement, letting Cunningham walk without a plan, that's not what contender behavior looks like. That's what disorganized teams do when they're reacting instead of leading. And the Fever don't have time to play catch-up anymore. They've got the centerpiece. They've got the attention. But none of that matters if they can't deliver wins. The clock is ticking. And if Indiana doesn't get this offseason right, it won't be long before the excitement around Clark starts to curdle into criticism. Not because of her, but because of the organization that failed to support her. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If the Fever blow this, there's no coming back from it. They've got the unicorn. They've got the eyeballs. They've got the attention of fans who've never watched a WNBA game until now. And if they roll out a half-baked roster full of last-minute patchwork, if they ask Clark to play hero ball while dragging a misaligned roster behind her, that energy is going to evaporate fast. You only get to ignite a fan base once. If those fans show up and see another year of clunky lineups, broken rotations, and a star player doing everything with no help, they won't be back. Not for year 3. Not even if Clark drops 30 every night. And that's the part the front office has to understand. This offseason isn't just a roster reset. It's a credibility test. Are they building a real contender, or just cashing in on Clark's popularity while the moment lasts? The losses of Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham were loud, whether they admit it or not. And now it's on the Fever to prove they had a plan behind those exits. Because if they didn't, they're not just risking losses on the court. They're risking the trust of a national audience that finally started believing Indiana could be something bigger than a footnote. So what's it going to be? Another rebuild or a real contender? Let us know where you stand. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like the video if you're fired up, and subscribe for more truth the league won't tell you.